Whether you realize it or not, ladies and gentlemen, you just walked into one of the most famous rooms on the planet. This is the one and only world-famous Apollo Mission Control Room, ladies and gentlemen. This is where it all took place for so many years, but especially well known for those years between 1968 and 1972, when the smart young engineers in this room were helping to guide our astronauts to and from the moon safely during the Apollo program. Now, not only is this the actual room where all of that took place, ladies and gentlemen, but believe it or not, these are the actual consoles that they used in those days. This is not a movie set, these aren't props, and these aren't models. This is the real deal. This building is a National Historic Landmark. What that means is everything you see around you here on these two floors happens to be authentic from the 1960s. That would include me. You're in the private viewing room here, ladies and gentlemen. This was never open to the public in those days. The astronauts' families were allowed here, NASA administrators and their VIP guests, pretty much any politician that came this way, be it from the United States or from around the world. And NASA astronauts themselves, when they weren't training and there was a mission going on, they kind of used this as a hangout place, kind of the boys' club, if you will, because they were going to watch and see what their buddies were doing in space that day. So you couldn't just walk into this room. You had to know someone or be someone to come into this room in those days. This room opened in 1965, and this room served as mission control all the way until 1992, almost 30 years. Now, during that time, we had 41 successful missions completed. If you look on the wall on the right side of mission control, you will see wooden plaques on the wall. Each one is attached, each one represents one of the successful missions, and the image on the plaque is identical to the cloth patch that the astronauts wore on their flight suits during their mission. Each of the plaques looks a little bit different because each crew got the chance to help design the plaque for their mission, working with the graphic artists, so they all work just a little bit differently. The large plaques along the very bottom row are from the Gemini years. Those are 1965 and 66, when we had 2 astronauts in the spacecraft at one time. Then if you look at the American flag, look directly above it, those 10 plaques on the left side of the wall, they belong to the Apollo missions, including all 6 moon landings. And then, on the other side of the post there, we have the icon for the space shuttle, and that's because the first 21 space shuttle flights were flown out of this room, although with much upgraded equipment. By that time, this equipment was in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington. But by 1992, technology was evolving so quickly, NASA simply couldn't afford to renew this room every year. So they made a decision to decommission this mission control, and we moved mission control. And the location for the current mission control is 1 floor directly below us. Still in this building, we happen to be right on top of them. And you walk past them, and you came up the stairs. Unfortunately, we cannot go see them because they're having mission operations right now. They're supporting International Space Station. But if you look at these 2 television pictures that I have put up here, this is a live picture of mission control 1 floor below us. You see it looks similar to this room. This is from a camera from the front of the room toward the rear, and that is from a camera in the rear of the room toward the front. And you can see the screens that they have on their wall like we do here. Now, mission control is a 24-hour-a-day operation, 365 days a year. It never, ever closes. We always have people working in mission control. As I mentioned, this building opened in 1965, and it has served as mission control every single day right up to the present. And that's pretty amazing, especially for this country. We like to tear things down after about 5 or 10 years. So we're still going strong here. Speaking of going strong, just look at the flag in the corner. That is no ordinary flag, ladies and gentlemen. The flag you see there has made 2 round trips to the moon. That flag went as a backup flag on Apollo 11 in 1969 on the first moon mission. And then it was sent back to the moon on Apollo 17, which was the 6th and final moon landing for the Apollo program. So then the Apollo astronauts presented the flag to the controllers here at Mission Control after that was done. So if you add those 2 missions together, that flag right there has traveled over 1 million miles in space. Looks pretty good for the mileage, doesn't it? And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the most important point that I want to share with you today is just exactly where you are and to value and appreciate and soak up the history that you can find only in this room. Because this was the room that Neil Armstrong was speaking to on July 20th, 1969, after he and Buzz Aldrin had made a successful landing on the surface of the moon for the first time in human history. The very first word spoken from the moon was the word Houston, because that is the radio call sign for Mission Control. So we like that around here, that Houston was the first word from the moon. And Neil was calling Mission Control when he said, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." The Eagle was the name of the spacecraft. The Sea of Tranquility was their landing spot. So Neil was letting folks know that we had arrived. Wow, what a big moment in this room. But it got even more exciting about 6 hours later, because that was the time that Neil and Buzz were to go and explore the surface of the moon. So Neil was down the ladder first. There were 9 rungs on the ladder, and then he had to hop off and drop down about a meter, about 3 feet. And he paused there with his boots in one of the landing gear, and then the next thing that happened changed the course of human history forever. Because that's when Neil stepped off of the lunar module with his left boot and he touched the surface of the moon for the first time in human history. Wow. He had some very famous words he wanted to say, not just to the people at Mission Control, but to all of us back here at home on planet Earth. And I bet many of you know those words. Neil said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Ladies and gentlemen, all of that and much, much more took place in the room that you see right here in front of you. And this is my final point. Where we are right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not like a McDonald's franchise where they're all over the world. Where you are right now, inside this room, this viewing room, this is the only place on the entire planet Earth where you can have the experience you're having right now. Because after all, ladies and gentlemen, there is only one Apollo Mission Control. And if you don't mind me saying so, I think that makes this a pretty darn special place. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Fantastic. Well, before we go to our next stop on the tour, does anyone have questions for me? It can be about this Mission Control or just about NASA in general, past, present, or the future. I can do my best to answer that question. We all hear like, yes, sir.
Are we going back to the moon?
We are not certain, sir.
Okay.
We do